Did anybody watch The Hunt yesterday, the recording that we did for people looking for work? I just want to know if anyone thought that was useful, even if they're not actively looking. The panel was so smart, and the people who shared, their pitches and stuff, I thought they were crazy brave for stepping up and doing all that. Okay, so everybody, welcome. Friday, office hours. It's 9 a.m. in Denver, Colorado. It's snowing outside, which is awesome. I wish I had a ski day. You can see I'm ready for my ski day. But I wanted to share some stuff with you about Search Console's bulk export utility tool. A lot of people want to do data analysis at scale. They want to escape the limits of 1,000 rows inside Search Console. They're sick of working with the native connector in Looker Studio because it's really, really slow. They want to take advantage of all the extra fields that are in the table schema that come with the bulk export utility tool, but they just don't know where to get started, how to deal with this. Is it right for me, my agency, my organization, whatever? So I figured I would help connect the dots, fill in the blanks, all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I want to start with is a tool that exists inside of our website. And this tool is freaking awesome because it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And before I joined Sterling Sky, I worked at Two Octobers. And while I was there, we built this tool called Branch Explorer. And Branch Explorer is a product that we sell and stuff like that. But what I had always wanted to do was connect that particular tool to Search Console data because the bulk export utility tool, because our tool leveraged just the our tool leveraged just the Search Console API. I'm getting a bunch of screens open over here. Our tool leveraged just the API, and the bulk export utility tool works super differently than that. And what I mean is that the Search Console API allows you to aggregate your data and make a request for any particular day that you want to get data for. And you can get up to 50,000 rows of data per day using the Search Console API. If you use the bulk export utility tool, there's like that row limit goes away. You get as many rows as are available. And when you're getting stuff via the API, you have to make decisions about what's smartest for me. Like, do I grab stuff aggregated across all countries as one lump? Do I need to have visibility at the country level? Do I need to have visibility at the device level? Those two decisions will impact how much data you store um, per client. And what you'll find is that if you go the API route, you're going to be storing something like 2 to 25 gigabytes of data per client when you backfill 18 months worth of data. And that backfill piece is really critical to talk about because when you're doing stuff via the API, you can go backwards that 16 months in time. When you use the bulk export utility tool, it's just like Google Analytics, and that when you start to use it, you flip a switch and it starts collecting from that date forward. There's no historic backfill. And that historic backfill problem is one that I'm kind of interested in solving, but not, but I'm not like crazy interested in solving it. So I just haven't pushed myself to do it. And the reason why is that the bulk export utility tool gives us a very different table schema than what you can build out of the box with standard stuff coming out of the API. And I'll show you the differences so that it'll make it a lot more sense for you. And I'm just opening up a whole bunch of windows here to make our lives easier. Okay, there we go. Let me share my screen. We good so far? Am I talking too fast? Are we doing okay? Hopefully I didn't lose you. You guys can see my screen, right? Okay, so this is located in our blog, and I'm going to share it via chat now. And this page is really good. And I think it's really good because it answers a lot of the standard problem or questions that I would have if I was wanting to know um, how much it was going to cost. Number one, it walks you through the setup of setting up the bulk export utility for a particular website. It also gives you a way to basically mimic what we built with Branch Explorer um, for free, which is pretty rad. So you don't have to build out all the Looker Studio reports. It has a Looker Studio template that it'll build for you. Um, and it'll connect to your pre-existing Branch Explorer implementation. And so to find that, I got to open up BigQuery here, and I got to find our Search Console. First of all, I got to remember what I named it, which would have been really, really helpful. And I'm going to just switch users over to Noah. And then I think I have access to Sterling Sky. No, I don't. Sorry about this. Sorry, I'm a little bit discombobulated. My meeting wasn't supposed to happen, and then I got pulled into something last minute. While this is all loading, what we will do, I hate LastPass. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I think it's the freaking worst. Okay, so sterlingsky.ca. So we're going to go through setup of all this stuff. The first thing you need to do when you're setting this up is click the settings tab inside of your Search Console property. And then what you're looking for is this tab inside the settings, the bulk data export. And then when you do that, you're going to have to enter the name of the cloud project. And then you're also going to be looking for the name of the data set. And it's almost always named the exact same thing. And before we go too much further, it's really important to talk about best practices. Let's say I'm an agency and I have 100 clients. It's really tempting if I have access to their Search Console data to be like, sweet, I'm setting up the bulk export utility, pushing to my Google Cloud project, and then the engagement ends in a year and a half, and I'm in a world of frustration. I strongly, strongly recommend that this is the kind of thing that the client always owns if you're in an agency environment. You do not want to own this data if you were talking about the bulk export utility. Instead, you want to set up a screen share with them and walk them through it. In short, what has to happen? You have to set up a Google Cloud project. You have to turn on billing. You have to turn on a couple different APIs, and they walk you through it. They've got good documentation for setting it up, and they've got stuff over here on the right to kind of walk you through it. And that's going to be a little bit outside the scope of things, but of what we're talking about. But I wanted to just get you familiar with things. Okay, so I was in the wrong project before. I was looking for Search Console inside 2 Octobers, and I was in the wrong project, so I got to fix that. And I changed from 2 Octobers to Sterling Sky GBP. And as we scroll through, just so you can have an awareness of what's going on here, this is a project. These are all things called data sets. Each data set is something that will be tied to a client. At least that's how we set it up. And then I'm looking for a specific data set that's named Search Console by default. So if for some reason you're setting this up in your own environment instead of the client's environment, I'd recommend doing one project per client, which is a pain in the ass because you can't change the data set name. It's always going to be Search Console. So you can't, I think you can't change the data set name. Yeah, you can't. There's no editing of that. So you kind of have to think of it that way if you're doing it in your own environment. And then I want to show you what we're looking at because it's a little bit confusing. The first thing is that this is not part of the standard This is not part of the standard setup. This is the table that we built with our free tool. But what is standard is the export log, the site impression table, and the URL impression table. And I'm going to just kind of wheel through these really quickly just so you have an awareness of what you're looking at. Um, the export log is every single day Search Console pumps data into your tables, and this is telling you what actually happened. And you'll notice that there's an epoch version column. I want to sort of bring your awareness to that because that particular column shows you situations where Google's going in to fix data that they've already pushed into your tables. So if you see a version that's other than 0, that tells you that they made a mistake and that they have to fix it. That's just something to be aware of. And then in BigQuery, there's this thing called Table Explorer, which is pretty rad because you can go in and select a field and then you can explore all the values in that field. So if I go and I look, I'm hoping to see only a value of 0. That means that Google has pushed in roughly 6 months worth of data because I have two tables that we're pushing in each day. So I'm basically dividing this by two. And that tells me that I've got clean imports coming in from Google. Okay. The site impression table shows you all of the fields that are coming in the bulk export utility. And this is where we start to get excited and why the bulk export is cool. Is anonymized query. So when we look in Search Console and we see that our clicks and our impressions and all these values never seem to match up with those 4 values that we see at the top of the performance tab, this helps us get closer to understanding why that's happening. And what you'll see is that you're going to see that there are specific queries that are anonymized, and this value will be null in the table. And you can see that right here, right? Like on August 11th, our homepage received a query that's anonymized, and there's all this other stuff about it that happened. The country was, I think AFG is Afghanistan, but I'm not sure. It was a web search type. It was a desktop device, 1 impression, 0 clicks. And then you'll notice this some top position. This is something that's important to know, excuse the pun there. This is something that's important to know about the bulk export data. They don't give you an average position. You have to build that yourself. It's always um, some position divided by numbers of impressions if you're going to build it yourself. That's the URL impression table. I think we're used to thinking about all of our data as being and oh, by the way, check this out. They have device and country at the row level, which is super rad because when we're inside normal Search Console, we can only see things at one dimension, right? We can see stuff at the page level, the country level, the device level. This is unifying all those at the row level for us, which is super rad. How's this going so far? We good? Are you guys digging this? Am I talking too fast? We good? Okay, cool. Um, who's ready to get super pumped? Me? I know I am. Okay, so let's leave the site impression table and go over to the URL impression table for a second. Wow, look at all these fields. Isn't that radical? So let's go through them all. Data date, think of that as your date field. Site URL is the property. URL is the page. Query is the query. Is anonymized query again? Is anonymized discover? That's pretty rad. They give us country, search type, device, is AMP top is AMP top stories. Notice these are all Booleans, by the way. True or false for all of these different things that you can filter your data by. And here's an important thing to take note of if you're doing pros and cons between API and bulk export. None of these Booleans are available via standard Google Search Console API. So that's a huge reason to use the bulk export utility. If these things look like something that you'd want to be able to segment your data by, then the bulk export utility is like the way to do that. No, it's not, Brian. Great question. He asked, is AI overview available? No. And I've had um, conversations with John Mueller via DM about this. And I think a lot of people complaining on socials complain about why can't we see? I saw Lily Ray talking about, it's absurd that we can't see AI overviews. And their official stance on this isn't different than any other search result. You're still seeing a position for those. You're still seeing impressions for those. You're still seeing clicks. We're not segregating them out. And I don't know if they plan on adding it to this, but job listing, job details. I forget what TPF is. Oh, sorry. Q&A, FAQs, how-tos, web lights, is an action, is an event listing, is an event details. If I'm an event company, that's pretty interesting. Is this appearing in an Android application? Is it an AMP story, AMP image result? Is it a video? Is it organic shopping? That's pretty rad. If I'm working in ecom, there's no other way to see that. Is it a review snippet? Is special announcement, recipe, etc. You can get pretty into all this stuff. Product snippets, merchant listings, learning videos, impressions, clicks, some position again. That that pain in the ass thing with some position, dividing some by total impressions gives us an average. Our free tool makes a lot of this stuff, it expands out the schema a bunch and it gives you some other things that you get to play with. Like, I'm just trying to find them for you here. Let's get out of our Boolean values. Okay. We added all these fields at the bottom. So you get full path, which basically gives you the same URL path as Google Analytics to make it easier to unify your data with GA4 data. It gives you up to 4 different levels into the subdirectories. So you can go from, think of a website that's got a whole bunch of subdirectories. This will allow you to drill down to all 4 of them. Protocol, host name. It also gives you some information that's needed to power the report template. Is it in the top 20? Is it in the top 5? This will give you values of at different buckets of clicks. This will tell you how many words were in the query, which is really useful for thinking about long tail stuff. Bottom of funnel, middle of funnel, top of funnel. And I'll get into that when I show you the tool in terms of like how to set it up for your particular website. Um, this will return a value of whether or not a query fits into any of these 3 buckets. Um, questions. This lets us know if a query starts with a question word that's predefined. This is whether or not the query is branded. This lets you know if the URL matches a GBP problem. This will help you see things whether or not they fit into a low-hanging fruit bucket. Nothing on knowledge box or local. Correct. Um, and then segments, which are really rad and are not available in an easy way that I know of. Basically, this allows you to create segments of any way that you want to chop up your website. So and it's all about what's in the URL string. And I'll show you kind of how that all works. Keep in mind, I'm selling nothing here. Like this is all like we built a free tool to give it away so that I could present this at Tech SEO Connect for that just went by in the fall. And so everything I'm showing you is free on my side. Um, and then basically to walk through it. Oh, and there's a great, I don't know if it's great. You'll have to be the judge, but I made an 18-minute long video to like walk you through it later. But like basically what it does is it gives you a configuration sheet and I know. There's a lot to it out of the box, which is scary. But this is how we set up the project name. And for me, this would have pushed to Sterling Sky, GBP. And then the data set is always Search Console. You set up the property that's inside Search Console and you set it up to match that pattern. You set up your brand name and just know that there's super detailed instructions for setting up every single one of these values. You can skip all of this too and just like make a copy of the report and follow the instructions inside the tool. But basically, you have to grab, you have to copy, make a copy of the tool. You then grab this URL, paste it into the tool. You add your project. And here's what's pretty rad. It's going to create all this setup code for you. And then I have to add my GBP name. And then something's wrong. What did I do wrong? This is supposed to produce a whole bunch of Search Console, excuse me, SQL code that's going to allow you to build out your tool. And there's something funky going on. I wonder what's going on. Cookie consent. There's something funky going on that's not building my code for me. So I'll go through this and make sure that this tool works perfectly for you. So let's shift gears and talk about cost because I think that that's really the key piece here. I was in a chat with someone last night trying to explain all this stuff in terms of costs. And I want you to understand like how to think through this. And in general, what we can do is look at and this thing walks you through how to figure this out. Um, Basically, what we're going to do is look at our URL impression table. And inside BigQuery, we go to this URL impression table and we go to the details and we look at how much data is in there. And right now it says that there's almost a gigabyte of data. And then I look at the number of partitions and that'll help me understand, we'll just call it 1 gigabyte worth of data. And that I can take the amount of data that's in there, which was 950 megabytes, and I divide it by 194 partitions. And that's telling me that I'm putting in about 5 megabytes of data per day. And then watch what happens when we calculate it. We'll calculate it out over 3 years. Oh, my JavaScript's broken. Oh, so it's not working because the JavaScript's broken. I wonder what's going on with this. Because I've never encountered any bugs before. One, five, calculate. So what you're going to find if your numbers are small is that it's going to be like free for the first year or two is the takeaway for a smallish website. And you're going to find that there's costs between years 2 and 3 for larger sites. That's the key takeaway from showing you this. And I'll fix this page so that there aren't JavaScript errors. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. So I'll look into that. But in short, what happens is that you have 10 gigabytes of data for storage for free, and that's per month. And once you get over that 10 gigabyte threshold, it costs, I think, 4 cents per gigabyte per month, which is really small per property, right? But when you scale that out to however many properties that you have, it'll give you a sense of what those costs are. But the storage is really never the problem. That's always the other key takeaway when you look at this cost stuff, even when you're looking up inside Google BigQuery's billing, what you're going to find is that the vast, vast, vast majority of your costs are associated with the querying side. And what do I mean by that? The querying side for our tool is, hey, there's a daily transform process that runs. So Google has to query data, transform it, push it up into tables. That's one set of querying. And then there's the, hey, I use this tool all the time querying. And we'll get into that too, because I want you to see lookerstudio.com and we'll just look up branch. There. Okay. This is what your tool is going to look like when it's all built out. And this is the data that's coming out of our particular stuff with Search Console. You're going to see bottom of the funnel queries that align with your particular, that align with your particular website. You're going to see queries that are low hanging fruit, and you define inside this tool what low hanging fruit is for you. And for us, we define it as between positions 3 and 10. You're also going to be able to see all the queries that start with all the queries that start with question words by default. You're also going to be able to see all of the stuff that is a brand query. And that's because I have all these other filters set. Maybe I didn't set up brand queries for this particular client. I might not have set that up in advance. But you will see that. And you'll also see URLs that start with GBP patterns, like UTM campaigns equals X or Y. So out of the box, this thing gives you like tons of different visibility. It also will allow you to segment all your data by country, excuse me, by device here. And then you can also segment all your data by search type over here. Notice web is pre-selected, right? That's pretty cool. And I did that on purpose because depending on the website, including all the different search types by default means that we're searching through lots of data. And same thing on the date. I shrank it down from whatever's in the pipeline to just down to the last 3 months. So by default, when I open up my tool, I'm not like requesting a ton of data right out of the box. Same thing on countries. I predefine which countries I care about when I use the tool. So I'm not looking at all 200 countries in the world. I'm only looking at the things that I care about by default. And I want to show you how to set up that customization because that's key to managing cost control. We go in, we hit edit, we select the item that we want to set it up. And I look at my drop downs to get the exact match pattern that I'm looking for. And it's an uppercase web. So I would type in uppercase web here and it'll exactly match that thing that's in the drop down. I do the same thing for country. So watch what happens if I choose just lowercase web. My understanding is it's not going to select them. See how it selects something that doesn't exist? And there's no record count, right? Like I have to make sure that it exactly matches the pattern, which is uppercase. And now you'll notice that it maps to the row, right? It maps to something with a record count. Same thing with countries. I look at the patterns that are here and I choose my selections as lowercase USA comma space CAN for Canada. And you can do that for any countries that you care about. You could remove that default selection and then it'll be wide open for all the countries, but it'll radically expand how much data you're querying. And you can see that, right? Like if I care about UK or I care about Brazil, that's going to pull in a lot of records if I want to query those. And this is a key component for like controlling costs when you're querying data. Same thing on the date picker. What I'd like to do is I think I set up a 90-day window as my default when I'm doing all these different kind of tools. So I'll select my date picker, go into this thing, and you'll notice that it says that it ends 1 day ago and it starts 92 days ago. That's because with Search Console, we always have that like delay on the gap. And so this allows me to kind of account for that by changing the gap and making the 90-day window a little bit further back. Okay, so this is rad, right? I can see Search Console data also built into the tool. You've got different ways of looking at the data, and what I mean by that specifically is you can change the grain. Who hates only being able to see stuff at the daily grain in Search Console? This by default changes it to a weekly grain, which is really helpful when you're expanding your date ranges out so you can see change easier. It's not like this noisy thing where you can't really see it. And this allows you to go from the weekly grain that's set by default to the monthly as we go up to the annual, depending on how much data you have, right? And yeah, it's set to the weekly grain by default. And if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, you can by going down. All of the charts in this tool are set up with that kind of granularity changing mechanism. Um, oh, I built this too for this tool. I forgot about this. Um, we all hate anonymous queries, right? So this allows us to see what percentage of our total is anonymized. And for our agency, this is a really small percentage, and that's because I think we're viewed as a real leader in local search. And for the stuff that our agency ranks for, we're like a real global expert on this topic area. So the percentage of stuff that's anonymized is super small. Whereas for most websites, I think what you're going to find is that it's not exactly flipped in terms of 95% of stuff is anonymized, but I think you're going to see ranges that are anywhere from 30 to 85% of the queries are anonymized. Whereas for us, that's super small because we're actually viewed as an expert on something. And I built that specifically for the bulk export because you can't see this any other way. Like if I use the Search Console API, I don't have visibility into that. Question searches page. This I thought would be really helpful for building out FAQ content. And then also just know that behind the scenes there are some hidden. Did I include those? Let's see. No, I didn't to make this simpler. I basically stripped down functionality out of our Branch Explorer tool while still building something super free and badass because I thought it would be really useful for you. Okay, Topic Explorer allows you to explore different topics. And basically, I could say things like, I want to look at all of the queries that include GBP, and I want to see all of the pages that rank for that. And you can go in multiple directions, and it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can select a query, and it'll show you all the pages that are getting impressions for that. So you can see if you've got like some cannibalization issues that you might want to work on. And you can also work backwards. You can start on the page and it's going to show you all the queries on that page that include that string up here. And I can remove that. And now it's going to show me all of the all of the stuff that's on that page that, all of the queries that appear on that page. So you can work in both directions. You can work from the URL to the query or query to the URL. Page Explorer is super rad and is a highlight of our normal branch tool. Um, and what it allows you to do is to really focus in on a specific page. And what it allows you to see is how the individual queries are contributing to the whole. So I can see like which particular query is driving all the clicks. And this is way more valuable. Like if I sorted it by clicks, I could then have a much better looking graph because I'll see something that where there's actually trends versus like weird spiky stuff like we saw in the last visualization. But like if I go to our homepage, big surprise, I'd assume that Sterling Sky is the query that is driving all the clicks, right? Same thing down here for impressions. Which queries are driving impression changes? And what you're going to find are things where new queries come into play and they start to play a bigger size in that stacked area chart, or they start to shrink. And I'll go to a different page so that we can see that kind of change. And I'll look at a couple pages to highlight that shape that I was describing right here. This is wild. What happened on January 13th that meant that these different queries are ones that we no longer rank for? It's wild to see kind of how impressions change. Change Explorer, I think, is super, super helpful for technical SEO problems, but it has some limitations, and I just want to make sure that we talk about that. So, for example, what happened between here and here? I want to know why. Actually, no, let's look at this period of time to understand why things changed. Um, and it's right before Christmas, but Christmas time is actually a time of growth a little bit. So like let's look December 16th through December 29th. Actually, that makes a lot of sense of why our click volume as an agency would be down. But like let's say you wanted to explore that. I'd change this to fixed, go here, and I'd go December 16th till December 29th. And what that enables you to see is which directories on your website, which pages on your website, and which queries on your website are contributing to that change. So, like an algorithm thing happens, an algorithm impact hits your website, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? This helps you isolate what directories, which oftentimes correlate to which page templates we're working with, right? So I can look at which directory, and this doesn't have a directory symbol, but that's the home page. And then if there were more than one page, it would show you all of the pages that are contributing to that trend. And then you can select that page and it'll show you where you're actually, which queries are contributing to that change. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. And then keyword cannibalization, I think is really useful also. And what's useful about it is, and we're going to change that date picker, is it allows you to start with queries and then see which pages are cannibalizing for that. So let's get rid of our brand queries to get rid of all the Sterling Sky stuff. And instead, let's focus on Joy because she rocks. And this is where we can see some pretty useful things. I can see because the whole row is green, I can see that I probably want to make sure that that's the page that is ranking for Joy Hawkins. And I might want to de-optimize all these other pages where I might be getting impressions or clicks for her. There are scenarios wherein, and this row is green like this because it's getting more than 50% of the clicks and it's getting more than 50% of the impressions. Does that make sense? And if only one of them was more than 50%, then we would see just that column green, not the entire row. This helps you think through the cannibalization problem, and it helps you understand the cannibalization problem. Um, and again, it's really useful if you sort things by clicks, right? Um, and then you can find the things that matter to you, like buy Google reviews. No, thank you. Um, and if we're doing a good job, we'd see that all consolidated. But what's interesting is you can kind of see how the different pages are performing for impressions and clicks, and you can see how that's been different over time. Like this one page, buying reviews could cost you everything. Um, over time was competing more heavily for that particular search term. And as we drift over to the right, it became less prominent and more consolidated around just the green one. And we can see that the green one got the lion's share of all the clicks over time. And for our website, which is busy but isn't enterprise by any specific fashion, you can see that it's kind of spiky because the click volumes are low on any given day or week. But for an enterprise site, it would be very trendy, meaning you would see trends rather than spikes. I think this page is super rad. Site structure insights allows you to kind of look at stuff by directory level. I talked about when we looked at that table schema for the table that we're producing. This allows you to drill down to the directory level, which is super rad. And I could pick one directory and then I can drill down inside that directory. And if stuff exists down at that next level, we'll see all the pages that fall into that bucket and all the queries that fall into that bucket over there as well. Does that make sense? Cool. And then Segment Explorer is pretty rad. We don't have, oh, we did. Yes. I built them out. When you build out segments inside of this tool, and they'll look somewhat similar to this, and the directions for building them are detailed and over here. And I talk about it in the video. And if you get stuck, please, please, please ping me because I'll help you through it. I promise. But what it enables you to do is to say like, hey, I want all the pages that include X to be in the About Us segment. All of the pages that include Y, and it could be as simple as going through, let's say if you have a WordPress site and you look at the posts sitemap to discover all the URLs, you can manually capture all of those URLs to add them to the blog directory segment. Or it's the same thing for services or GBP or whatever you want to create segments. And what's neat about this is it's not building what's called a case statement. If you work in Looker Studio and you're building like if X, then Y, if Z, then A type logic, that's called building a case statement. And the way that those work is that they always run from the top to the bottom, which means that if something is one thing, then it can't be anything else. And the way the segments are built, it's actually more advanced than that. It allows any page to fit in any number of different segments. So let's say you have a page that includes the word Nike and it includes the word product. It can be both a product page and it can be a Nike page, which is pretty rad. So it allows you to be really granular with how you build out your segments. Does that make sense? And is it awesome? You guys think this is cool for something free? Okay. So I'll make sure that this page works properly and I'll post in what channel should I post in? Can you guys give me feedback? What channel do you want me to post in when it's fixed?
Would that be like Looker Studio since Looker Studio?
Data Viz, I guess
Yeah.
the Data Viz channel. Okay. So I'll post in the Data Viz channel. Um, yeah, so like there's also like detailed instructions for how to use every single one of these pages, and it is going to open up a whoa, look at Notion doing cool stuff in the console log. That's kind of neat. And we're hiring. That's pretty cool. But it'll open up Notion documentation for how to use every single page in it. And the setup stuff is not relevant. I was basically building a free tool for a conference, right? So like some of this setup stuff isn't relevant, but the how to use it part, which is going to be further down, is super useful. Or is it just the video at the top? Yeah, so this is the walkthrough. It's 3 minutes for like how to use Segment and Explorer. But in general, I was trying to like give stuff away for free. Um, so yeah, and this gives you a sense of like how charges are working out now. It's I think 2 cents per gigabyte to store in the US. Anything that's stored longer than 90 days goes into a cheaper bucket though. And that's something to know about like how storage works. It's always like slightly cheaper over time. Okay, let's open it up for questions. We got 13 minutes. I hope this was useful. I hope it gave you my goal was just high level, what is this thing? How do I set it up? How much is it going to cost? And then what an advanced solution that takes advantage of it could look like. I haven't seen anyone else. I'm not aware of another tool that uses the bulk export data. I think the one that I showed you is the only thing that's available for like an off the shelfy, how do I work with bulk export data at scale? Um, and again, it's something that I spun up because I'd always been thinking like, how could I use branch with bulk export data and how would they work together if I was to build something? And I think the what I built is pretty rad. I just didn't have the desire to turn it into a product. And the reason why I didn't want to do the product is that meant that I had to solve the backfill problem. And I just didn't really want to solve the backfill problem. So I got hung up.
Does it need
Anybody?
to be a domain property?
No, you could do either. Yep. What else?
So at Sterling Sky, when you're talking to your clients, like how do you talk about the cost and like why this is a good thing for them to pay for?
So fantastic question. None of our clients are using this. And the reason why is that we have a custom version of Branch Explorer in-house and we just use that. And the reason why is that um, bulk export utility, we saw that it was potentially going to managing all of those different Google Cloud projects was not something that I wanted to take on right away. And for most of our client projects, I think of this as a tool, what we built as a tool rather than a reporting device. And we already report on our work in different ways that doesn't involve Search Console data at all. Like we only talk about leads. We don't talk about, hey, we got you more traffic this month. Hey, our average position is improving because our clients don't care about that. They just care about the money. And and I think aligning around that particular business goal, if I was to share anything with anyone about how to be a better SEO, it would be this. It would be align around your client's damn business goals and do not talk about rankings, do not talk about traffic and I mean, traffic could be a business goal, but like in general, revenue is the thing. And so our reporting talks about that. If you had SaaS companies, startups, and every person in the startup is a SQL wizard, and they're chopping and slicing data up in a myriad of ways every single day as part of their workflow, then they're going to want a very different type of report than we're producing. But our clients are lots of small to medium sized companies. We also work with some enterprises that have hundreds of locations, but in general, that's where you butt up against the our IT team is using Power BI and we have all these things that are pre-built and blah, blah, blah. And then when we get access to their Search Console, we add them to our standard Branch Explorer pipelines that it give us the visibility that we need to move the needle for them. Um, all of our clients are in one country. They're not global, so we don't need necessarily that like country breakdown that the bulk export would provide. Um, but I think if you were dealing with an enterprise company, they should have this level of insight that the bulk export utility allows you to see. And the key piece of this is that if you were to build your own solution that enables you to give that same type of granularity that the bulk export gives, but just using the API, where you're engineering to solve for the countries by break down by country and also break down by device, it's key to know what that means in terms of like engineering challenges. Um, let's say I backfill somebody's pipeline and I'm only grabbing their data and segmenting it by device. That break for our branch engineered product, that breaks down to about 3,000 API calls, a little less than 3,000 API calls. If I add on the country breakdown, that can be upwards of 600,000 API calls, depending on how much data actually exists at the breakdown by country at the daily grain. Because you're basically having to grab every single type of data that you want. You have to grab it for each individual day and grab up to 50,000 rows of whatever you're trying to grab. So it it makes it so that the bulk export, the thing that I'm trying to explain and doing a really crappy job of it is that the bulk export utility solves a very pain in the assy engineering challenge and makes it very simple. It's the data just auto magically appears in my BigQuery table every day, and I don't have to solve any of the problems, right? I didn't explain that very well, but hopefully you get the gist of it. They solve a really big pain in the ass. Like I don't want to deal with 500,000 or 1 million API calls to backfill data. That's why I was like, yeah, I don't really want to solve the backfill problem because the only way to make it useful, you have to provide the country breakdown. I think people would expect to be able to see their data with the country breakdown, and then to support that, it's basically producing 500,000 API calls. And there are limits as to how many API calls you can do inside of a project with Google Search Console. So, like solving all those second and third order problems is what's the pain in the ass part, is thinking through, like, okay, let's say I have a product. That means selling it means that I would want to be able to support more than 3 or 4 clients doing a backfill in any particular day. So, it was just a pain in the ass that I didn't see a lot of value in solving for me personally. Um, does that make sense? Did you guys dig this? How could I have done this better? I know I could have been organized and had a deck ready, but it is a free office hours, and also I figured you'd be okay with the organic way I usually roll with these things. At least I was hoping that would be the case. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say it's Peter. I just really appreciate um, having access to this. This looks really amazing. I think a lot of the time there's a lot of stuff that you take for granted on your approach, and I've known you for a long time, and kind of absorbing it. But what you did there was great. I'm really excited about this. I didn't see it before. This whole process. I think the thing that I always kind of bump into is every time we're in here, I'm always kind of like, what would Noah do in this situation? But I think the key is I have to kind of find the little anomaly data points. And at that point, there'd be a conversation. Well, okay, what would Noah do right now with this? Because a lot of time I look at it, I'm like, I know something happened, but I don't. So it's almost like the use case is the part where I'm kind of like, not sure what to do with that one example.
Yeah.
You know, but when you ask the question of what could be missing, it's like that's the part for me. It's always missing when we talk about this stuff. Is like I just don't have the experience you have with this depth of data. Yeah.
The the most important, I mean, that's a fantastic question, and I want to share something with everybody else because they're not going to see this off the bat. So I just want to find this. Okay. I think this is how I, just generally speaking, this is how I approach analysis, like how I do it. And I wrote this piece of documentation because I felt like people didn't know how to deal with the tool, and when they walk into something like Branch Explorer, there's just so much data there. And, many, many rows, lots of tables. People don't absorb um, tabular information very well a lot of times. They see time series data, but some people will see time series data, but they won't see tables very well, or they see tables and they look at time series and they get confused. So like people have different ways of processing information. And the key thing is having a question in mind before you even approach a tool. What am I trying to solve for? And having like a process for making decisions and solving problems that you stick to all the time, and have that process be reflective of how you think and how you're able to glean meaning out of information. And that's the key thing. And I'd be happy to do office hours just about that particular topic next time, because I think like that's and it doesn't mean that after we do that talk, you're going to be a rocket scientist genius, and I'm not. But this is just sort of like how I approach things. It's what do I need to solve for? What is the actual problem? And spending a lot of time up front defining the problem. And then where can I find the information that would actually help me understand the answer to that question? And then think about the tools that are at your hand that might provide insights into that particular problem. Gather the data that would maybe give you insights into it, look at it, and make what are called inferences or decisions about what you're actually seeing, and then creating a hypothesis for what you might need to change that's in your control on a particular website or property that will actually address that problem that you're finding, and then implementing a change and tracking results over time, and then turning the wheel on that decision making process over and over and over and over again. But a lot of it is having a willingness to spend time exploring data. And that is not like anybody that's like, hey, I need the tool to spoon feed me 10 best ideas to do this or that. Like they're not really understanding what's happening on the website. And the exploring of data part is super frustrating at first until you start to see things. And once you start to see things, then that will inform how you look every other time after that. And when you see that first insight, write it down and then ask yourself the question of like, what else does that uncover? What else could I uncover with that way of seeing things? So hopefully this helped.
That was really great. Thanks, Noah.
Yeah. Hey, we're at 10. I got to get back to work. Any last questions though?
I just have a quick random question. Is there a repository for like past office hour videos?
I have not been releasing them because I've been feeling like there are things that get shared in them that need to be proprietary. This one I'm going to release though in the general channel in the captain's log. And I think I'll build a web page for it on the site and just have it be a grid of videos. And then you click each one and it'll go into the page and it'll have a transcript and blah, blah, blah. Did you get value out of this, Brian?
Yep, definitely.
Good. Word. Yes. What about you, Kim?
Yeah, it's just analysis paralysis going on. Yeah, so you're right. In the very beginning, it's like, what are you researching? What are you looking for? And knowing that, and then going in and then just having the time to look through it.
Yeah. Word. That sounds about right. Should we do analysis next week? Next
Sure.
soft hours? Okay, cool. Let's do that. I'll be in Utah next Friday, so I'll be chiming in from Derek Perkins's house from Nozzle. I'm staying with him next week. Okay, y'all have a great week, and I'll post this up in general or in Captain's Log. Talk soon.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Bye.